recovery program because I was in a really abusive marriage and it did some real damage to me. And learning about that was really eye-opening for me, for what I was going through, and it really opened up what I've been dealing with for most of my life, carrying trauma from a childhood. Um, and it was just absolutely eye-opening for me to realize that I wasn't really that messed up. I was just carrying a lot of baggage. And once I started to unpack that baggage, how much easier my life became, and the more confident I was in myself again, the better relationship I have with my children. So it just really became, like I mentioned it there on earlier, a snowball effect. Once you get into it, it just like you get hungry for it and you want to get better. And that's just been my goal. So I quit the group that I was co-hosting. It was about 7 months ago now. There was just a lot of changes in the organization, and I just didn't like where things were going. And I've been struggling to find a group that fit with what I was looking for. So that's why I joined all the groups on Facebook and trying to, just reach out as many places as I can to, one, get myself help, but two, help other people. Because man, there's so many people struggling right now. So
Yeah, mental health is definitely a big issue.
there's just it's tough, man. It really is tough. So if I can use my struggles and my battles to try to help somebody else through their battles, man, absolutely makes everything that I went through worth it. So absolutely, I'm in it for the long haul, man. I'm quitting my job and starting a different career in mental health because it's just that important to me. Money, not so important. Mental health, absolutely important.
I wish I could say the same, but we need money to work though.
You gotta pay them bills, right? But yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
definitely become less of a priority in my life. So
Yeah. But I understand what you're saying. That makes perfectly complete sense. All right, I'm gonna have Wayne go ahead and introduce himself again here.
All right, so hi, I'm Wayne Smith, and I am an active duty military member. I've been in for 18 and a half years, and I'm also a certified health and wellness coach. And one of the things that I really look for is to, like Chris says, is helping people deal with this mental health thing. In the military, you use a lot of people who don't take the services that are offered, and even on the outside of the military, people have restrictions based on health coverage. Maybe their mental health wasn't be covered by the insurance, but the military is offered, but it's still not really fully utilized at the fullest extent. And why is that? Is because of those stigmas around men seeking help, and supposed to do it by ourselves, or uh, dealing with those masculine societal traits where you feel like you're weak for asking for help. And not just me, but everybody's included with that. Where I myself at times have trouble asking for help, and reaching out when it's appropriate. And so that's one of those things where something like this, being able to talk about it with other men and for other people to see, is going to remove that stigma and that barrier, and hopefully get us all to a better place.
All right, I'm gonna have Frank go ahead and introduce himself again here. How you doing, Frank?
Hey, doing good, doing good.
That's good.
Yeah, uh, I also joined this group when I was going through my divorce, so I can empathize with the struggles and the feelings and the emotions. Um, so so yeah, uh, that's the reason why I'm here. I grew up in different parts of the world, I understand different cultures and stuff. And I think I have a good grasp of mental health, and what's healthy and what's not, and what it is that many people don't understand. um if someone was to have a PhD in mental health, and it being that your experience is spending time in the mental health institution for 20 odd years, that would be me. You know, I spent a lot of time in mental institutions, and it was hard. You know why? Because of Jack Nicholson. You know Jack Nicholson?
No, who is that?
He's an actor. He's an actor for that movie called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm,
Have you
never
heard of
seen
that?
that one. I never seen
Have
that
you heard
one.
it? You've never heard of that movie
Mm-mm,
before?
mm-mm.
It's it's a perception of what mental health is in today's society. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a direct reflection of what people think about you when you're in a mental institution. So, why would a normal person want to seek help, regardless to whether they can afford it or not, or whether the government is subsidizing mental health, or whatever the case may be? Why would anybody want to go there when Jack Nicholson clearly states how it is in the cuckoo's nest in a mental institution? So personally, my take on mental health, you know, I think it's the way it's structured right now. I don't agree with medicating the mind and pretending it's almost like drinking a beer, you know. It, but they call it medicine instead. They call it Abilify, or they call it Provid. They call it some dumb names, and they feed the stuff to you, so your brain gets confused, and then you're thrown back into this world of more confusion. So my take on mental health and whether it's good for you or not for men, you know, I think it's good if you know what you're doing there. If you know what you're doing there and you know how to use it, it's good. But if you don't know how to use it and they're just pill popping and you're just going back on your hamster wheel, then I don't see the purpose.
So would you agree that it's okay for men to see therapists? Would you say that?
Yes, it's very shameful. It's very shameful as a man to seek mental health. Very shameful. Very shameful. You know, it's hard. It's the worst thing you can do. But yeah, you have to surrender when you can't make up your mind. Because when you can't make up your mind, you end up shooting yourself. So
Literally, yeah.
that's why you get suicide. So you have to get in there. Yeah, it's blind faith to walk in there, and it's blind faith to listen to what the doctors and those pills they make you swallow. It's just all to confuse you, just to make you feel it's a band-aid solution. I'm sorry. It's not to confuse you. They have good intentions, but yeah, it band-aids certain parts of the mind to make you feel like everything is okay. So yeah, that's my take. If you go in there the right way, you can find yourself. Because when I spend time at the mental institution, 72 hours at a time, what's great is it disconnects you from the world. And when it disconnects you from the world, you understand, the things to believe and not to believe, the right things to do and not the right things to do. You don't have access to phones. You don't really have access to TVs. You don't have access to anything. So you can really find yourself in these places if you use it that way. You know, back in the Philippines, one way they deal with mental health is they go to these silent retreats. You can go to a 3-day retreat and do everything but not say a word. You know, that's the same thing. You find yourself. And many cultures exercise different ways to deal with mental health. But the bottom line is it's good to seek it if you understand it. It's bad to seek it if you don't know what you're doing. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I am a big advocate for for seeing a therapist, because I saw a therapist 2 years ago. And personally, it has helped me, to overcome some of my insecurities that I used to have about, just being around people in general. And it helped me to just understand myself better as a man in society. And I feel like a lot of times, it is kind of stigmatized that men in general shouldn't be seeing therapists. Like, no, you man up, you will handle your own problems. But actually, that makes us weaker when we try to deal with our own problems instead of trying to get help when we need it the most. So I am a big advocate for, men getting therapists and seeing it on a weekly basis because, you know, no man is an island. We can't think that, we're so tough and masculine that, we can handle everything that's thrown at us. We wasn't designed to be that. It wasn't designed for that. God put us down here to help each other and to seek out the help that we need from other people. So I am a big advocate for men going to therapists, whether that's monthly or every 2 weeks or whatever it is, because suicide rates is really pretty much high among men because we suppress all of our feelings. We don't want to say how we really feel. We have to act tough and put on this persona, for what? And at the mind is telling us you need the help, but we don't want to get it because as a man, we have to put on this persona. We have to say, "Oh, I don't want to get the help because what is people going to think about me if I was to be in that, office with that, female therapist or male therapist? What is that going to say about me? That's going to say that you shouldn't have to worry about what other people think about you, and it's going to say that I'm strong enough to get this help. It's okay. We go through a lot of problems in life, but when we go to therapy, it helps us to be our best version of ourselves. Now, I will agree that some people don't particularly like going to therapy because it might bring out some emotions that's, left unchecked, and it can cause, for us to dig a little bit deeper than what we really want to. But that's okay. That's part of the personal development and growth in you. That's not nothing to be ashamed about. If it brings up some, some feelings that you didn't check earlier in your childhood, that's okay. That's why you're there, to get the help and to grow. But that's just my take on, me and being able to go to it and not feel ashamed about it. So
If I can add on that too, it's okay to pull out when those feelings get tough too, and that's where a lot of people struggle when therapy and self-realization really starts to get deep and dark. A lot of people just pull right out because it's too scary, right? And that's where a lot of men, we lose men in mental health because of that reason. But helping people understand that that's a normal part of going through therapy as well. Something I find isn't really covered that much, that we're gonna hit some dips and valleys here that are
Good morning.
dark and deep and scary. Hey, little man.
Stop.
And it's okay, right? If
Go
you
there.
need to pull
Take
out
care
of
of right.
that, when I was trying to uncover what was going on in my mind, and we started to go through childhood stuff, and they were just like, Chris,
On these
you're not
fall.
progressing through this as we want you to, or do you feel like, we need to pull out of this? And I've never heard that before. They've always kind of had their mandate, what they wanted to get through. And once we got to the childhood therapy, if I didn't want to cover it, they were like, hey, well, we can't help you anymore. And that was really frustrating to hear the first few times. I've tried therapy many times, and I'm an advocate that it's tough to find the right fit. I mean, I can't speak to just anybody. That was an eye opener for me. I went through, I think it was 13 therapists before I found somebody I felt comfortable enough and that I could trust.
because you don't want to feel like someone is judging you too, based
Yeah,
on
right. And maybe that was me, as a young man trying to get therapy. I think I was 22 the first time I sought therapy outside of, being told to by a parent or a counselor or somebody else from my school or something like that. When I just genuinely went to go get myself help, I was just flabbergasted that I didn't fit with a therapist. I thought that, you went into a building and the person was there to help you. And, it was eye opening that, I didn't get along with the person, or their views were just outside of where I was at, right? And in my journey, and their expectations of where I should be in my journey were two different things. And once a man meets that, it's like, well, I'm just trying to meet your expectations now. My only expectation was to try to just understand myself just a teeny tiny bit. And once you hit that wall of like, now there's an obstacle in front of you, you know, do you hurdle that? Do you keep going? Do you stop? And for me, it was all right, just refilter, you grab a new therapist, but then you start at the beginning. You have to start, you know,
That's
it's
the
like
toughest
those,
part because you have to start and explain your whole story when you see somebody new. And
right?
not
And
a
that's
lot of
not,
people don't want to do that, you know?
yeah, because you're paying for that.
Yeah.
Right? You're paying for that time, or you're basically small talking a therapist who's paid to analyze you, but they also need that data in order to help you in the right way, right? People rush through that introductory part because it's expensive and it sucks, right? But if you're not honest, which is another point that I wanted to bring up, um, you know, you're only going to get so far, and then you're going to hit this wall where your therapist just constantly says, "Well, how do you feel about that? How does that make you feel?" And when you hear that 4 or 5 times in a row, you see a pattern and you're like, okay, well, I'm not paying for this anymore because,
Because
you know,
you
he's
don't want to
telling me to
accept that
talk to
hard truth.
myself the entire time, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just not going to serve me if I'm telling myself, dude, I'm not a professional. I'm not the guy that should be giving me advice right now. That's why I'm in this office, you know? Like,
Yeah.
when I heard that first few times, I was like, hey, maybe therapy's not where I need to go. But there's plenty of other options for mental health too, right? And that's, I'm an advocate for groups and chats and support groups. Those things, man, it's so powerful to hear somebody else going through the same thing that you're going through. You know, that was mind blowing to me to understand that plenty of men like literally lose their shit after a divorce. I had no clue. I thought I was just the weakest form of a man because I lost it, you know, and that's just not the case. Like 80% of men completely are completely a different person after a divorce, especially if it's a brutal one. Like mine was not nice, man. My wife just up and walked out on me one day when I was at work, and that was like traumatic to deal with. And I had no clue that this happened to a lot of men. And the things that I was dealing with and the feelings that I was going through, I thought I was alone in there. But I got into a group with 13 other men, and it was like we were all dating the same woman. It was so messed up to just like hear it over and over and over and over and over. And I did that group 1 year as like a member and then 2 years as a facilitator for that. So I spoke to thousands of men, and it was the same woman in a, you know, a form of maybe 4 different types of women, but they were all the same, and we were all getting just lambasted by these chicks in court and with our children and everything else. But it was so enriching to know that there was a community of guys going through this. And once we all started speaking, it was literally just like so progressively helpful. Like I did maybe 10 years worth of therapy and counseling and, you know, behavioral therapy and all this other kind of junk that I was paying for out of pocket. And I got nowhere but more self-hate and more self-doubt and more like down on myself. Whereas with these groups in 3 years, my mental health has went from like rock bottom to enlightened. And it's been so nice to just do it on my own. One, not paying for it. Two, like no status quo of where I should be or what I should be doing or how I should be doing it. I just figured out the things that I wanted to learn, and I'm like, learn them.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, guys. So, do you feel like a therapist is there to make you a whole completely person, or do you have to put in the work yourself to do that?
They're like a
Like,
guide.
can the therapist just like completely change you to make you into a person that you want to be, or do you have to actually put in the work to get there yourself?
No, I would say that the therapist is not going to completely change you. All right, that's that the Western medicine, right? The quick fix, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
The magic pill, magic potion. That's what Western medicine's about now. It's like you want that quick fix. You want that person that's just um, boom. I got the therapist. All right, I went to therapy. I've been maybe 2 times, and then all right, I should be good now, right? They've told me what I need to do, and this and that. And they didn't give me some pills. They diagnosed me, and boom, I'm set.
Yeah.
right?
Dumbasses.
Handled,
Dumbasses.
right? Handled.
And what happens, right?
Dumbasses.
They fall and they go right back to how they were before. And so that's where it's like with
Vaughn,
what
go.
it was said earlier is that, you know, if you go into therapy thinking that um you're just going to change automatically, then you're going to fail. You're not understanding what therapy is. But if you go into it with an understanding and expectation of what it actually is and what it can do for you, then you're more in line to be successful with your therapy. But like Chris said too, your first, second, third, fourth, 12th therapist may not be the one for you. And that's the thing that a lot of people aren't ready for as well, myself included. You know, you think like, to give an example, like my wife's a nurse and she taught me a lot about healthcare because in the military I had free healthcare. So I just go see the doctor and whoever they assign me. When it comes to my kids and getting doctors, I didn't realize that there's different levels to being a doctor, right? This doctor may not be good for this type of kid and treating this. And I'm like, well, they're a doctor, right? It's all the same. No, when it's in the healthcare system, they explain to you how when you're a normal person, you don't realize that they're just people too. And like Chris said again, they also
Exactly.
have by unconscious biases or environments they're used to catering to a certain demographic of people, and then when you come with your problems, you're like, oh well, I got this and that, and they're used to dealing with suburban moms, then maybe
Yeah.
they're not the right therapist for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a therapist like fall off the chair when I like opened up about, what was in my head. And they laughed so hard. You know, there was one of them and she laughed so hard, and another one started laughing. I mean, imagine the pain I was going through when they just start laughing at you. When you're here
Mhm.
trying to explain to them what's in your head and they're laughing their ass off. You know how
Yeah,
painful that is? I've gone through like so many therapists. I mean, therapists are good, again, if you know how to use them. They're good to organize your memories and your thoughts. They have this thing called EMDR. EMDR allows you to dig deep into your hard drive and try to find the first memories. It's good, but you have to know what to do with those memories. And what therapists do is they validate what you communicate to them and they help organize your feelings. But that's about as far as they can go. It's up to you to figure out the rest. And like the gentleman said earlier, he feels enlightened. When you feel enlightened, then it works to a certain extent. So that's what I think about therapists. You go through a lot of them, and then you get to the point where you're afraid to open up, and because they're gonna laugh at you. And that's I learned that from my last therapist, and then so now I just don't talk about it and just talk about other things with the therapist to make them feel okay too.
Yeah. Is there certain topics that you say, I don't think I should talk about that because they might get
Yep.
offended,
Yeah,
or they might think I'm weird, or they might think I'm,
there you go. Weird.
yeah.
well, absolutely. But real quick, we get to that. I would say, if therapists last at me, the therapist is going to need a therapist after that because I'm be getting on them.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely, man. Because that's so detrimental, dude. I'm
that,
sorry you had to deal with that.
um,
Like
but
that's
yeah, that's totally unacceptable. But yeah, there's certainly, like, I go back to what I just said. The therapist that's used to suburban moms, um, and you're a guy, right, who comes in and you have problems with, let's just say, with keeping up with your kids, running around, being active, and you're not as good at your recreational softball league that you used to be a couple years ago. She may be looking at you like, "What? This is not even a problem, right?" Because she's used to a different thing, but for you, it's killing you inside because you're not the same man that you were because you can't be as physical as you were. And so that's just one of those things too. It's just not there's not one size fits all type thing.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like I had a therapist for 2 years, because I really related to her. She was pretty much young like I was. So that I can't get any more relatable than that. So she understood what, most of my problems were. And I feel like before her, I had a different one, and she was just always judging me. She would look at me and say, she would just give me like look like it didn't like I was like, how are you a therapist if you're judging me in my mind? But I didn't say that to her. But to make a long story short, I didn't understand that it's just some people wasn't like the connectability, like the relatability between you and your therapist. It has to be there. Like it has to be some common, like it has to be where you could just be able to talk freely and express however you feel, and it could be ugly, bad, good, whatever. Um, but it might take some time for you to find the right therapist. But at the end of the day, I feel like that's more helpful to find it than to just say, I'm done. I'm not gonna ever do therapy again because I didn't find the right person. It just takes some time. Just like Chris said, it does take some time. You can go through 14 different people, but you know, if you don't like their personality, or if you don't like how they are, you know, helping you, then you don't have to be with them. You don't have to go back to them. Because I mean, ultimately you are paying, whether it's through, you know, a government program or whether it's through your own money. So to find that right therapist, it can take some time, but I feel like it's gonna help you if you do find the right person instead of just giving up on yourself. Because like I said, like we said earlier, you do have to still put in the work in order to you know, get to the healing process or whatever you're going through in your life. No therapist can just come in and say, you know, write some notes, take some guidelines, and boom, you're healed. That's not how therapy works. It's a process, it's over time. It might take 3 or 4 years, it may take 5 years, it may take 6 years, it might take your whole lifetime to get better. But that's okay, you know. We wasn't designed to be perfect. If that was the case, then God would have made us perfect.
Actually, we're all perfect. We're all perfect.
Yeah, right. We all
Perfectly
have
imperfect.
problems. I like some people don't want to admit it, but that's the first step to that's what they said. That's the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. If you're sitting there and acting like everything's okay, then what's the point of you being there? There's nothing to talk about. You're not ready to take that next step to say, I need help and how I'm going to get help. A lot of men, we just like to just suppress our feelings and say that nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong. And when people literally ask us what's wrong, because they know something is off. They know something is off and they can see it.
Well,
So
yeah, and that I mean that brings up a good point. Is that um, how many of us do suppress our own emotions, right, to appease others at times too. Especially if you have a family and something tragic happens, you know, sometimes you have to be the one who's the strong one in the family, and it's like, where do you turn for that?
yeah.
And a lot of us don't have, even outside of therapists. Um, Chris brought up the groups, which I didn't even know there was such a group for divorced husbands, right? Talking about it now, I know, and I can share that with other people. Um, but we also don't have. It goes away from we don't have those close, even friends connections that we can discuss our most deepest emotional aspects of our how we feel with people as well. So that's also another hindrance of it. But getting back to therapy, so one inside note I will say, as a going through my health and wellness training, uh, as a coach, they tell you to your first meeting with a new potential client is to the introduction. There's really no coaching that whole time. And yeah, like you said, unfortunately, you have to pay for that. And then it turns out, so as the coach, you know, part of the ethics is to see, like, am I a good fit for this client?
Yeah.
Right. And it's also a business, right? So therapist, counselor, health coach, you're still trying to get paid at the same time. So not everybody's going to follow those guidelines, those ethics of this person may not be a good fit for me, but I lost 2 clients. I need to gain one back so I can get that revenue. So I'm still going to try my best to help them, even though they're not a good fit.
Right? That's a really good point, Lane. That's something I never even grasped about. But man, this is somebody's job and they got bills to pay just like we do, right? So you know, where does that ethics line come in? Because yeah, it would be hard, especially you're only one or two clients deep and you got to give up a paycheck basically to tell this client, hey man, we're not a good fit. You know, it's better off for that client, but man, you're gonna be much better off. You know,
Do you
karma
ever
rule says you're gonna get 10 clients to replace him, but man, it's tough to make that call, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you ever feel like therapists will say that, okay, I don't think we would a good fit, or do you think they would say, like, do you think they would say they would, hey Frank, you're on mute. Let me tell them that.
Oh, yeah, he's broken over there. All right, well, while we get him back, I'll go ahead and say that. I forgot what the question was.
Yeah, so do you feel like do you go in with the, let me phrase it this way. Do you go into the expectation that you're going to be healed, immediately, or do you feel like you want to go in there with the process of you healing yourself versus the therapist healing you? I say it that way.
Well, let me answer the question not as a person that's a health coach, but just as me before. I would have went into therapy thinking, okay, this is going to help me, right? This is going to cure me of everything that's in my head, and I'm going to be perfect after this. Because that's the perception that's out there, right? Oh, you're feeling depressed? Oh, okay, go to therapy. Therapy will help. How does it help? No one it's not fully explained what you're doing. You're going there to talk about what your things, and sometimes just talking about it out loud, you get that whole new perspective. And you're like, oh wow, okay. Or just bouncing ideas off somebody, then you can really understand what's going on with you. Um, so if I was to go into therapy now, I know without a doubt that it's not going to make me perfect. I understand what therapy is and how it can help me. And the same with being a health coach, how I can help other people uh, become healthier with themselves. But the first thing I tell them is, I'm not going to be able to make you perfect, right? I can help you. I'm a guide along a path, but you still have to do the work. And if you're not ready to do the work, then maybe this isn't the best for you right now. Um, and that's what I would say about